oops, sorry about that. Make sure we have as many people as possible taking advantage of these funding opportunities in Office of Violence Prevention. So yes, I'm Will Pinckney. I'm the director of the Office of Violence Prevention. And I'm going to speak really high level about the RFP opportunity, the funding opportunity that currently is available through the Office of Violence Prevention. I will let people know that, just generally in the city, when a what we call request for proposal or RFP is out, there are very strict guidelines on who you can communicate with in the office that has posted that opportunity. So for us, it's the Office of Violence Prevention, and that's to make sure that the process is a fair process and everybody has an opportunity. So if you reach out to people in our office, they won't be able to answer any questions about this opportunity, but there is an email address in the RFP itself that lists the email address where you could submit questions, and we will post those questions and the answers. I believe twice a month, it says in the RFP. And that's so everybody gets the advantage and opportunity to see questions that were asked and the answers so that no one's at a disadvantage. When RFPs are posted, they're posted in multiple places in the city, but you can access the RFP on our website, which has been just sort of restructured a little bit. And someone can probably, from my office, can put a link to the page, but there is procurement opportunities that are listed in our site. And you will see two opportunities that are currently available. The one is youth programming RFP, and we also have a community violence intervention RFP. There is no closing date for this RFP. We leave them open on an ongoing basis, which means that it's open until funding is expended. The funding that's available is $3.6 million in ARPA funding. We do list a maximum award amount in the RFP, and I think for this one it's $250,000. I will say you shouldn't just automatically apply for the maximum amount. It should make sense in terms of what you're doing as it relates to young people. We do have the target population listed in the RFP, and people oftentimes will craft proposals that just are to the maximum amount. And writing to the amount doesn't mean that you actually have proposed a really good program or one that makes sense. We are looking for you to really provide services to young people on the ground. So I would say make sure that whatever proposal you put forward and the budget that you put forward will really communicate that you are focused on providing a service to young people, and quite frankly, not just paying for a lot of people who don't do any direct service within your organization or don't serve young people directly. So just something to think about. People ask about the timeline. So the city traditionally does 1-year contracts with the ability to extend. It's not that you would only get the funding for a year. Obviously, that would depend on your performance in that time. But I will say, because these are ARPA funds and they have to be what is called obligated by the end of this year, by December of 2024. And obligated for us means that we have to be engaged in a fully executed contract with an organization to provide the services before the end of that year, and those funds can expend to the end of 2026. We probably will engage in multi-year contracts under this RFP, because I don't anticipate us entering into any contracts until after the beginning of the year, just because of how the procurement process goes. I will tell you, obviously, I just always like to be upfront. There's always language in the contract where we can end the contract at any point. Obviously, first and foremost, to make sure there's no funding available, but this funding is available and based on performance. But there will most likely be multi-year contracts. This youth programming. So I will say, I mentioned we have a community violence intervention RFP out as well, which also has a youth diversion piece to it. I would separate the two RFPs in terms of their focus on youth, based on as it relates to high-risk youth and youth who are carrying weapons, engaged in violence, or even victims of violence. The CVI RFP is more focused on those types of youth programs. This youth programming RFP is more focused on, I would say, your traditional out of school time type funding, creating safe spaces. We even built in a piece around transportation because that is a barrier. So if someone, has the ability to provide transportation to programming, they have an opportunity to do that. There's sports related opportunities here. Not that we're looking for people just to propose a sports camp in and of itself, or maybe sports training, I would say. But the RFP really speaks to, once again, the target population and the type of programming we're looking for. So I will say that, if you have questions, please submit them. But really, this is about engaging young people in priority neighborhoods. Those are also listed in the RFP. We've identified these neighborhoods because they have high rates of violence, high rates of poverty, high rates of disinvestment. And so I know oftentimes, organizations serve whoever walks through the door. We're looking for some intentionality in terms of engaging youth in these areas. The programming through this RFP doesn't necessarily have to be in those specific neighborhoods, even though we would encourage that because there's not a lot of programming that's conducted in those neighborhoods. So that's just something else to be mindful of. Data is very important to our office. So we do expect you to be able to collect data. We do collect individual record level anonymized data is the best I can describe that as. So we don't, depending on the program, for the most part, we don't need names. You can have unique identifiers, but we do want to know information about the individuals that you are serving. It allows us to be strategic in our decision making around funding and the approaches that the organizations we fund take in the priority areas potentially. So if we see a lot of youth coming in contact with law enforcement or the courts from a specific area, but we don't have a lot of people serving kids in or from that area, then that dictates how we move in terms of making decisions around funding. So just to give you an example of why we collect data, but you will need to collect that data and disseminate it to us on a monthly basis. We do allow for people to put funding in their budgets or money in their lines in their budgets for someone who does data. So I would say, make sure when you're submitting a proposal for the work, you have all the pieces and people you need to do that work. We do collect invoices on a monthly basis as well. So you will need to submit invoices and data on a monthly basis to us. This is a reimbursement contract. There's a lot of tension around this. There's a lot of people advocating, and myself, including myself in this city and in cities around the country, to make sure that small organizations are able to take advantage of these funding opportunities, because we need those small organizations who have credibility in those communities to be engaged. But unfortunately, right now, this is reimbursement. And what that means is if you deliver a service in June, you have until July 15th to submit to the Office of Violence Prevention invoices and supporting documentation for reimbursement for the services you provided, whether it's personnel or whatever the budget items are. So you submit it to us. By that time, we still have to verify everything's in order, and then we have to submit it to the comptroller's office. So what that means is you may not get that payment until the middle of August from work that was done in June. We have a really good process, we feel now. We have 2 contract compliance people. We have Salesforce, which is where people submit invoices. So we've been pretty good in turning around invoices pretty quickly. But I would say the quickest you would get back, you would get a check back, would be if you did services in June, you probably wouldn't get it back before August 1st the quickest. So that's 2 months that you have to be able to float funds. You do have the ability to work with a fiscal sponsor and engage a fiscal sponsor in your proposal. I'm sure other people will talk about that, but I just really want to be clear on the reimbursement process. You do not need a fiscal sponsor. And the key thing for your organization is that you have to be a registered business entity with the city of St. Louis, or have a business exemption from the city of St. Louis. You have to be in good standing on a tax basis.
Did we lose Will, or is that me?
Yeah, he froze.
Okay. We'll give him a moment to come back. Or we'll jump in. Mo, were you able to text him to let him know he's frozen? Oh, he'll come back.
Sorry about that. What
Yeah.
was the last thing you heard me say?
That you needed to be a registered business and in good standing with the city, or have a business.
So that does. I'm gonna turn off my video just in case that's hurting it. Yes, a business exemption or a registered business. That means that you don't necessarily have to be a 501c3, but you will have to be registered. The other thing I was going to say about that, oh my God, I lost my thought now. Registered business entity.
You mentioned being current on your taxes.
Oh yes, you have to be current on your taxes. Oh, and you have to, because this is federal funds, you have to have a UEI number. You have to register with grants.gov for what is called a unique entity identification, I think is what it stands for. So UEI number is also something that's needed because these are federal funds. Can you be a brand new program? I would say you can be a brand new program, but the amount of funds that you may be eligible to receive may not be as much as you would like, because we do a risk assessment. So someone who's never got any funding from anyone, we're not going to give them $200,000 to just turn a number out there, because they haven't shown a history. We do ask for a financial audit, and you don't have to have the financial audit. If you don't, you can just provide a letter as to the fact that you don't have that. But I will say we do want to encourage, and we do want to fund, and we are looking to fund younger, newer organizations. Once again, you just have to be realistic about what you may be able to get, based on that being the fact. And as I said before, you can ask questions. Obviously, in this forum, you can ask questions, but regularly you can send those questions in and we will respond to them. So I think those were the main things that I wanted to cover. So I'll stop there, Colleen, and turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Will. That's hugely helpful. And we will have a chance to go over questions today. So I'm going to ask that folks hold on to their questions during this webinar, and we'll save plenty of time for them. I'm going to share my screen. Will just gave a lot of really important information, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming. So I want to share my screen to just show a little bit of where some of those pieces of the grant live. So as you go back and watch this recording, if you're like, where did he say that? There's a little bit of a cheat sheet. So this is the full RFP. Can folks see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this is available to download, not with my highlights here, but a clean version on the OVP's website. So I just want to run through a few things. So as you are going back and thinking about if this is the right grant for you, you know where to find things. So page 4, it talks about the purpose of the grant. 3.6 million is available for youth programming to be allocated over the next year, or will clarified, through 2024. Each program could be awarded up to $250,000. Next thing I want to point out is here on page 6, these certifications and qualifications. So this is a really helpful place to start to make sure that your program is a good fit for this opportunity. On page 7, here's the list of the deliverables. Another really important thing to consider as you're wondering if this is the right grant for you. Please don't take these highlights as me saying you don't need to read through this entire RFP. You do, it's all valuable, but I do want to flag as you're starting, you might start here and just make sure you're a good fit before you read through all of the other things. Program specialty areas. So here on page 8, it identifies what your program could look like. It's pretty broad. It could be academics, it could be the vocational training, it could be other. So that's lots of opportunities there. Program categories also on page 8 will tell you what type of program this could be. So out of school time, during breaks, after school time, summer programming, or other opportunities. Page 9, these are some locations where you might host your program. Those are optional, but places you could host your programming. Also on page 9 is these target types of youth, helpful to consider. On page 10, this is a really important area. This grant is going to prioritize work in these 10 target neighborhoods. So consider if your programming is in those neighborhoods or could be in those neighborhoods. Also on page 10, a little more details about this data expectation, a little bit about budgeting, or a lot about budgeting starts on page 11. And go over here, see what else we're looking for. Okay, this page 12 talks about this reimbursement process. Also on page 12, these required proposal contents. This is going to be your grail as you start. If you decide that this is the correct opportunity for you, you want to print out this page and make sure that you have all of these components because they are all required to be considered. Page 13 will tell you how are they making decisions about who gets funding. There's a couple more things I wanted to point out. And then page 22 is really the bread and butter of the proposal, which is the program narrative. So this is where you are going to explain what your program is, explain why your organization has a race equity approach to the work, describe the services you're providing, explain how you're going to collect data, and your budgeting. So wanted you all to have those pieces highlighted for you. I didn't introduce myself. Apologies for that. My name is Colleen Cunningham. I work with Equal Justice USA. We are partnering with the OVP to provide technical assistance to organizations interested in applying for this grant. EJUSA is a national organization. We work to reduce the harm of the criminal legal system and build up the power of Black and Brown communities to build their own safety and have healing. And so one of the ways that we do that is by partnering with frontline organizations to help them become stronger. I'm based in St. Louis. I'm a St. Louis native, so I'm really excited to be here working with folks in St. Louis doing such incredible work. And my colleague Tanji, let me have you introduce yourself, and then I'll jump into some more documents.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tanji Reese. I'm a part of our training capacity building team, and I'm excited to work with you all. I am in Detroit, so in the Midwest, but not in St. Louis. But our team works with organizations in Louisiana and in New Jersey, supporting folks with building capacity for their organizations and also helping with grant support too. So I'm excited to be here and to get to know you all more.
Thanks, Tanji. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again because I want to show a variety of tools that we've put together that will hopefully help make this process simpler for you if you decide you want to move forward with this proposal. I'm gonna end on this screen, which has our contact information. I want to start with showing you right here online. This is the place online where you can download the RFP and get all that information to read through and decide if this is the right process for you. If you want to pursue this, we are providing a few templates that we hope will make it helpful, make it a little easier to draft your narrative template. So this is, it gives some instructions about how to take that narrative that asks such specific questions and to make sure that you're addressing all of those questions explicitly. So we will send you with this, after this webinar, we will send an email to everyone who's registered, and we'll include a copy of this document, which can help you if you want to follow through and use this template to draft your narrative. I'm going to send it to you as a Word document, but it also exists as a Google document. And I think that it's really important to, when possible, work in Google Documents or in some collaborative fashion, because hopefully you won't be writing your grant alone. And so if you start to draft within a Google document, it gives you space to invite other collaborators to see your work. And you could even invite myself or Tanji, or we have another colleague at EJUSA who will be working with us. You could invite us to look at your grant, and we may even be able to help you in that way. We've also put together a checklist. None of this is information that's not in the RFP. I've simply reformatted it, so it's hopefully something you can actually physically take with you and check as you go through to make sure that you have accounted for the pieces you need. Again, I'll send this as a Word document and give you the information for how you can request them as Google documents from me. This is another, again, we've just reformatted one of the components of the RFP, this federal risk assessment questionnaire. And then one thing, then here we've taken out the evaluation criteria. Again, just another thing, as you're drafting, have this printed so you can be sure that you are drafting a proposal that's speaking to what the office is looking to fund. If you are interested in getting some support from EJUSA, and Tanji is going to speak a little bit more to what we can offer. One of the things we're asking you to do is to fill out this intake form. This is going to help us know how to best help you. I promise you that nothing we're asking you here is not something you need to have thought about and answer for this RFP. We are asking you some specific questions, and it's going to take a little bit of time, but answering these is going to be helpful to successfully completing the RFP. So hopefully you won't mind doing it for us first, so we can glance through and say, oh, it looks like they still need some thinking about what population they're going to be working with, and maybe that's somewhere we can help them. And so here is, we'll post in the chat and we'll send around after the link to that intake form. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and throw it to Tanji to talk a little bit more about how you can partner with EJUSA.
So we'll be holding some office hours, and that'll be time for you all to ask questions about the RFP if you want to go through it, if you want to share and discuss it. More specifically, we'll talk through just even brainstorming and program development. So if you have some ideas about your program or want to process through or talk through how to shape out your program, we'll talk about that. The budget is always a big part of the RFP process, so we'll be able to support with developing your budget, editing your narrative if you need time for that, or formatting your narrative, and also just answering any questions that you might have about the RFP or your grant. And then you can also have a conversation about if you think the grant is right for you, what next steps you want to have. I heard we'll talk about SAM.gov. So if you need support on SAM.gov, if you have questions about that, or even if you want to, again, know the next steps or see if this is a right fit or feels like a right fit, we'll be able to support during those office hours. So what we'll do is we have a calendar, a Google Calendar set up, and we have some time that our team is available over the next couple of months. And then we'll have it again in the new year as well, another set of dates during that time. But if you're ready now and you feel like you're excited about submitting for the RFP, then you can sign up for some office hours and our team will be there to support you. If you can't make any of those times and maybe you want a different time, you can email our team at capacitybuilding@ejusa.org. And someone from our team will be there to support you with that. And then we also have an email list. So if you're just interested in working with us at EJUSA or want to know about other things that we offer through our training capacity building program, you can sign up for our email list, and we send monthly emails with resources. We also send other funding opportunities, and we also make playlists too. So if you heard the music earlier, we make playlists on that as well. And this is how we are here to support you all. And again, if you have questions, you can always just send us an email and we'll get back to you soon.
Thanks, Tanji. Okay, I am going to open it up now to questions. If folks are able to raise their hands, that might make this a little more orderly since there are many of us. But if you're driving or you don't know how to raise your hand, it's also okay to just come off mute and we will figure it out. You can ask questions for Tanji or I or Will in his office, and we'll see what we can learn here. All right, thanks. Jimmy, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jeremy.
No worries. I respond to all J names. So quick question about the format. I have not seen a budget format in this. Is there, should we use like Missouri Common Grant or I guess just what are you all looking for on that front?
I'll jump in and Will can correct me if he wants. You can submit a budget in any format that you'd like. EJUSA is going to work to put together a template that can hopefully, for folks who don't already have a budget that they're using, we'll have that available as a resource to make it easier and make sure we don't miss any line items. So there's some flexibility about the budget format.
Yeah, I mean, the key is just to make sure you, even though it might be a multi-year grant opportunity, give us a 12-month budget broken down by month. And you want to make sure that budget aligns with whatever it is you're proposing and whatever it is the purpose of your grant is. I will speak to this really quickly. $3.6 million sounds like a lot of money, and it is to some extent, but if we're talking about building in multi-year grants to get us through 2026, it's not a lot. If you thought about the maximum amount, if we had 10 organizations that asked for $200,000, that's $2 million, that's done, right? So we're not gonna most likely be looking to fund everybody at the maximum amount, but if we're talking about over 2 years, we're probably having a limited number of maybe 10, 15, awards that we might do. So this is a competitive process, and we will be looking for people that are meeting a need, filling a gap, also understanding how their work aligns with other work that's going on. So many people will submit proposals that act like there's nothing else happening in the city or anywhere else for young people. And so if you're duplicating what other people do, or you're not serving people in a space that needs to, it might not be helpful to you. The other thing I would say is we do have community reviewers review these applications. You should make sure it's meeting, you're addressing all the things in the RFP, but you should also make sure it's written in a way that people who just are everyday individuals, parents, youth, or whoever will be able to understand what you're offering. They aren't the sole decision makers, but we do lean heavily on their expertise because this is to serve people in their communities and them. So just wanted to add those couple of things. Go ahead, Colleen.
Thanks. And I'm going to keep you, Will, because there's a great question in the chat I'd love for you to answer. A. Meyer said, are you able to apply for this if your foundation is registered in St. Louis County, but will be serving the communities in both the county and the city?
So I will say our funds can only be used for city youth. And as long as you have to be a registered business entity in the city. So if you are not a registered business entity, you could be in the city and county, but if you are not a registered business entity in the city, then you're not eligible for this funding.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, Robin, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for putting the policy and guidelines together. My name is Robin Ingram. I'm with Families United Youth for the Future program. My two questions. Earlier this summer or midsummer, I already had an RFP that was out for youth diversionary program. Is this the same RFP or is this different?
So this is different. So the community violence intervention RFP had a section, a category on youth diversion.
Yes.
That RFP is still open. So
Okay.
yeah, this is something different than that.
Okay, that was my question. I was concerned that the guidelines had already changed. And so what was the reason for that? But since you clarified, that makes sense. So this is a little different. So thank you for clarifying.
No problem.
I will say for folks who, if there's anyone on this call who's in the process of writing that CVI grant and then realizes, oh, actually, this is a better fit for their program, the proposals are really similar. They're not the same. You can't copy and paste the one to the other. But if you've been working on that CVI grant and feel like you actually want to do this youth programming grant instead, you're well on your way. That work was certainly not for nothing. Great question from Grace Bramman in the text. Are only out of school time programs eligible, or could in-school programming be eligible under program category D, which is the other programming?
So yeah, it's a good question. So if you mean programming during the school day, I would say potentially, I mean, there would be questions I would have. Obviously, you need to have a partnership with the school to allow you to do that. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that it wouldn't be eligible. I guess I would say it would be depending on what type of programming that is. And I might have the question in, why isn't the school district funding it? Because they have funds. So obviously we're trying to make sure our funds go as far as they can into organizations that don't ordinarily get funded. So I guess that's the best way I can answer that.
Thanks, Will. Question from Sarah Wenger. If our organization wanted to use grant funds to hire a new staff person for a role that doesn't currently exist, for example, maybe with a $50,000 or $60,000 salary, would we note in the application that we are hoping for a total grant of $100,000 spread over 2 years to support 2 years of the staff person's salary? Or would we request $50,000 and hope that it gets renewed for a second year?
So as I said, this one, first of all, you should do a 1-year budget, right? To say, hey, we need 50,000. But when we sit down, when we make a determination if the proposal is something we want to fund, that's when we'll have a conversation about the multi-year grant piece of it. So I wouldn't get as caught up, and I wouldn't worry about that in terms of your budget, right? I would just say you're looking for 50,000 a year, and you could say we would like a 2-year contract or whatever it is. I will say this: if you are doing something for a salary, if you are not serving additional kids with that salaried person, then that might weaken your proposal for consideration. We are looking to increase capacity. I think that's different than if your organization is no longer going to be able to continue to exist and provide some services, and you're looking to make sure it continues to exist. That's a different story. So I'll just offer that thought, but just hiring a new staff person without there being anything else as to a benefit to the community in and of itself wouldn't be enough.
Thanks. So just to summarize that, all budgets should be for 1 year of programming. And I will say, I know sometimes you write a proposal and you send it out and then the funder comes back and says yes or no, and you never hear anything again. What I've observed from talking to Will is this is an iterative process. So if you put forward a proposal for a program that's going to benefit the city, Will may come back to you and say, okay, well, how long do we actually need to run this? Tell me about this line item. You'd probably need some money for a data person because we have a lot of data requirements, things of that nature. So I hope that takes off a little bit of stress that you have to have everything. You want to put forward a good proposal. You want to tell the story of what you're doing through both your narrative and your budget, but this isn't a situation where you know, you ask for too much or you ask for the wrong thing and you never hear from the funder again. Like, we are all in this together trying to build a safety ecosystem in St. Louis. So the office wants to, you know, work with these work with all of us to make sure we get the programming that'll benefit the city. Good. Okay. A question from Alicia. If we are outside of the area, can we be lead applicant on the grant as long as we are partnering with an organization that is registered in St. Louis? The reason that the local organization cannot be lead applicant is because they don't have funds to support the project on a reimbursement basis, but our organization can support in that capacity. That sounds like a fiscal sponsorship opportunity or some sort of relationship that we're really, really excited to see. And I'll let Will see what else he wants to say to that, but absolutely. So if there's a way that we can work together with some of these bigger organizations, with smaller organizations to get the programming that we need in the city, that's the goal. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, no, exactly everything you said. Once again, though, and you know, this may have to have some more conversation after the fact. The organization that's signing the contract has to be registered within the city of St. Louis. So in the fiscal sponsorship, usually the fiscal, and sometimes both organizations do, but the fiscal sponsor is the one that's taking on that responsibility. They have to be registered. So, you know, I don't know how that relationship would be between the lead applicant and the partner and organization, but if the lead applicant can register in the city, I mean, it just takes away, especially if you're a 501c3, because you're going to get a business exemption, which is even simpler. So if you have other questions, you can ask, but you say we're not a fiscal sponsor, we will be providing programming. Okay, so if you're just providing programming support, and Colleen can get into this, to me, that would just be some MOU between you and that organization. Because you mentioned something about they don't have the funds to support the project on reimbursement. So I'm a little confused, because if you're not the fiscal person, then no one's helping them with the reimbursement process.
Yes, hi.
Maybe you could
Sorry,
speak a little more.
trying to do it all in the chat. The situation is such that we're actually located in Louisville, Kentucky, but we have relationship with a nonprofit there in St. Louis. And so we're not just solely the fiscal sponsor. It's that we have the capacity to do the reimbursement component and therefore can support in that way. They would still be receiving funds. But they can't just do it they can't, I guess, be the lead applicant, or maybe I'm not asking the right question, but I guess maybe the question I'm asking is, can the lead applicant be someone who cannot do the reimbursement piece initially, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
And then one of my staff just reminded me that, well, that's a fiscal sponsor situation. There may be a way to get a waiver on the fiscal sponsor side if you're not registered with the city. So we can dig into this a little more and make sure we get an answer to everyone. But yes, you can. Yes, you can be a lead applicant or whatever we just said. I can't remember the question, but yeah, the answer is yes.
Got it. Thank you. I'll follow up.
Is there a high level takeaway, Will? Like, the programming and the population served needs to take place in the city and be serving city residents. And are there any other things you'd add to that must-have list?
No, I'd say those are the key must-haves.
And then the rest are maybe logistical details we'll figure out. Okay.
I also heard you say they have to be registered in the city. The lead organization has to be registered in the city. Is that correct?
Well, I think it comes back to what are we talking about lead, because in Alicia's question, I guess my question, we can take this offline, she can send it. I don't know why she would need to be the lead in terms of signing the contract if they're just providing programmatic support. The other organizations are lead, whatever their relationship is with Alicia's organization is between them and MOU. If there's funding going to Alyssa and them, you know, I guess the question becomes this when you think about fiscal sponsorship. Fiscal sponsors tend to sign the contract because they get the reimbursement because they fronted the money to somebody before that time, right? If that's the relationship you need, then the lead applicant needs to sign the contract. If it's not that, if it's just programmatic support and they're getting funding after the fact or they're not charging for it, then the local organization can still be the lead because they register here and all those things. So I think it just depends. You can write out your question a little more. You can talk to Colleen and she'll get back to me and we can pursue that. Bottom line is we're going to try our best to make it work because we want small organizations. I'll go back to this again. We want small organizations to get funding. So we're going to do our best. We don't control all the answers, obviously, and we will do our best. Serena said the applicant has to be registered in the city. So we'll work through it.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Betsy and then let's not lose this good question from Grace, but Betsy's had her hand up for a minute. Go ahead.
So I was wondering if an organization has more than one idea or initiative that they would like to have funded, can more than one application be submitted?
Yes, you can't submit it in one proposal. You need to submit separate proposals.
Okay.
Just know that you're going to be competing against yourself. So
Right, I know. So I was just curious to see if that was an option.
Yes.
Will, if you can clarify around this question, Grace asks, you said all granted funds must be expended by the end of 2026, correct?
Correct. All ARPA funds, they have to be obligated by the end of 24 and expended by the end of 26.
So, but for this proposal that folks are writing now, they should put forward a budget for 1 year of programming for whatever their project is, right? So how people are funded with this proposal is a little different than like the ARPA spend down, right?
Well, only to this point, right? Whatever contracts we engage in related to this funding, which is ARPA funds, right? If we engage in a contract with somebody from on January 1st of 24, ultimately, we're going to engage in a multi-year contract with them because we won't have time in January 25 to revisit this, right? So it'll probably be at least 2 years. Theoretically, it could be 2.5 years, right? So it could be 30 months, whatever that is, right? The reason we're asking for the year is because that helps us think about if this is a program we want to go through. If it's $50,000 a year, then we know 2.5 years is, $125,000, right? And so that's why I'm saying if someone wants to say, hey, we're requesting 2.5 years of funding, they can go ahead and do that. But I still want to see a year budget because I want to know what that is, because that gets back to your point of maybe everything you've asked or put in your proposal, we're not going with. It'll allow us to see how you're itemizing that and what may work. We're trying to fund as many people as we can. We're trying to make sure we cover as many areas as we can. So that's all goes into how we're evaluating which ones to move forward. So hopefully I didn't confuse people more, but ultimately we want a 12-month budget, regardless of whether you're asking for, multi-years or that.
So I got a private question, which speaks to a broader question about timing. So this person said, at this point, have they received any proposals for this opportunity? And I think this is speaking to, there's no deadline, Will, that makes us nervous. Do they need to get it in next week? Do they need to get it in next month? Do they need to get it in 4 months?
So I can't speak to people's stress levels and their capacity to turn around a grant really quickly. I will tell you it's not a first come, first served basis. So it's not like whoever gets it in first gets the funding. So I would say as soon as you can, but put forth a good proposal. I mean, I see a lot of not good proposals because people are trying to rush and get them in. And they don't even speak to everything that the RFP requests. They don't have all the documentation that's required. And if that's the case, we're not even going to read it. Our first check is, did you check off all the boxes? Is everything here that needs to be here? And if the answer is no, it gets pushed to the side and we're not even going to look at it, no matter how good it may be or how bad it may be. So I think everyone has to answer that question for themselves. What's your turnaround time to put in a good proposal?
Thanks, Will. Another timing question from Tracy Berry McGee. What is the time frame from applying to receiving acceptance of the grant?
That depends. As we receive proposals, once again, we review them to see if they have all the necessary documentation. Once that's the case, we look at it to think about what we're looking for. Obviously, if it's the first one, it's tough. We're not able to say, okay, we have these types of different proposals. This is what we're looking for, or these are speaking to certain neighborhoods. So we're going to probably look to get a couple in. We're then going to have those community reviewers review them and give us their feedback on what they think makes sense. So it is a process. So it could be, it's not going to be short. Let's put it that way. From the time frame we get the application, it could be a minimum of 2 months, right? Before you actually receive acceptance of the grant. You may hear from us before you receive acceptance because we may have more questions. But the decision isn't made solely by us. We have what's called a public service agreement committee that we bring all of the proposals before that we are considering. And they get a whole bunch of information, including what information or what feedback we get from community reviewers. So it's not a simple process. And that's why I said we probably at this point, realistically, no contracts would start, I would think, before February 1st at the earliest, because there is that process. And once you are approved for communication around a contract, we're going to sit down with you. We have to develop a scope of work. We have to talk about what we actually are funding with you. So there is a process there. We have a lot of conversation with you before we sign a contract, because once you sign that contract, you're agreeing to what's in that contract. And we want to make sure you can actually do what's in the contract.
Thanks, Will. Alyssa had a couple of questions. What is the reporting frequency? They're going to require monthly reports, and there will be specific data metrics that are shared and agreed upon, so you'll know going in what they expect of you monthly. And then, are you interested in unique projects that have not been implemented before? I think Will said, yeah, they're unique projects, if they're filling a need in the city, are certainly a possibility, and they're looking for organizations that are known and well established. So it's just probably gonna be that benefit. Want to create new opportunities, and if no one's ever funded you before, they're going to be a little more risk averse. Know what you'd add to that?
The only thing I'd add to that is, don't feel a need to come in and tell us how great your program is, especially if you're doing something that's not tried and true. And people will often tell us how great their program is in their organization, but they don't provide any data or anything to show us the impact or outcomes of the work they've done. So we're less worried about how great you are. I mean, we do want to know that you do have, if you've been around a long time and been doing this a while, you have some data, qualitative or quantitative or both, that can speak to the impact you've had. But yes, we definitely are looking for people who, tried and true, implementing things that, not tried and true, implementing things that haven't been implemented before.
Any other questions? Thanks for these wonderful questions. I hope they've been helpful beyond the asker. I suspect they have been. So thanks for people who've been asking. All right. Well, can you talk a little bit about potential opposing priorities of wanting to fund small organizations without a lot of other opportunities for funding, and wanting to fund orgs that are well known and established? I'll give you that one, Will. You're on mute.
Okay, thank you. I don't think those are opposing our priorities. I don't see those as opposing priorities. So first and foremost, we want a good program, whether it's a small organization or an established organization. We don't feel a need to fund established organizations. That's not like where we start. Established organizations are usually just the ones who tend to apply because they've been through this dance before and they have the ability to weather the reimbursement thing. I'd say our problem isn't in choosing between the two as much as small organizations tend to just look at these RFPs and don't apply. So you can't be considered unless you apply. And you'd be surprised that you might get something because we have funded small organizations who haven't had funding before in the past. So don't be overwhelmed if you're a small organization. That's why Colleen and her team are here. But yeah, we don't see them as opposing priorities.
Yeah, we're really good at pep talks and telling you this is probably not the great opportunity. So don't hesitate to take that opportunity. If you want to come to office hours just to say, like, here's who we are and here's why I'm not sure, that's certainly something we can do with you. All right, well, I'm going to wrap up unless another great question crops up. Thanks everyone for your time and your really fabulous questions. I'm going to aim by the end of this week to send around this recording as well as links and documents of all of the resources that we referenced today, and we will stay in touch. Thank you all so much. Bye.